screen. We're live. Okay. Hey, everybody. It's the 19th of June, 2024. This is Plutus PBL Live Coding, and we just did a opening circle off air. We always have a chance to check in with each other, talk a little high level, and just check in on how we're all doing. And now the live stream is starting, and Harsha's got a question about the course. So I'm going to pass it right to Harsha. What you got?
So I was trying 102 and the Cardano CLI version, it shows up right here. It seems up to date, but when I try to do the query tip, it asks for the socket path again. I keep forgetting how to set this variable up, like where I'll find the path for the socket.
Excellent. And yeah, we do have to document this in the course. I think first, can we check your Demeter
Yeah.
dashboard?
Let me do that.
So you've got your PPBL 2024 workspace. That's good. You've got Plutus TX set up. And yeah, you've got the node running. But does the node have to be running inside of the workspace? I just forget how the settings work. Can you click?
So I think the UI has changed. It used to be where we can set up the node inside, but right now I think the node just keeps running.
It's supposed to just be running. So how do we set, you've got storage ports. What about, go to set, I just want to see what the settings are for this
The,
workspace. Like you have a settings wheel next to the name of the workspace.
right here.
Yeah, what does that tell
Oh,
us?
that's just the name of the
That's only the
workspace.
name.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in the project level settings over on the left side of the screen, what do you see?
Left side,
Under
this.
team, those settings. Is that just account settings?
Yeah, these are all account
Okay,
settings.
okay. So what about the exposed port of your Cardano node? If you go back to where you've got that node running, this is just pre-prod. It shows us an external endpoint. How do we access the node? Okay, let's look at the Demeter docs.
Meter.
You can run add resource. What in?
Oh,
You did,
okay, maybe this is the part. Add resource. Let me try that.
got the extras. Where is the add resource button? Extensions? Ah, there, that's,
There it is. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
I think this is the difference. And there it uses the word resource, create resource. So does that show up? Oh, you see it adds it over there though. But is there a difference? Okay, so close this VS Code window for the moment, because I think
Okay.
we're gonna have to like re-provision it.
Oh,
And
okay.
then which of, you see, it just made the node in the same spot. So it might be that you were right, but go back into the workspace itself. And if you scroll,
Maybe the thing is you are working on preview testnet, and I don't know if you have the in my case
I
the
think
in my case
I'm on pre-prod pre-prod testnet.
No, you are in
Oh,
preview. In this moment, this kit is in preview. You have to click in network and
Oh, look at
change it
that.
to.
Oh, okay,
And
okay, okay.
that's a
Oh, I
problem that
missed that.
currently has the kit, the Gimbalabs kit in the emitter. You have to make that change.
Okay, okay, okay. Okay. So,
What
so
with that? Oh, and look what changed down below. Look. Now we have all of these environment variables, including Cardano node socket path. And look, at
okay.
both of your pre-prod nodes are now connected.
Can delete one of them.
Bastion, MVP. Good eyes. Good. Okay.
Sebastian is a developer.
He's the hacker. He knows what's happening. Nice. Okay, so that's re-provisioning, and I feel okay, good. So as that's re-provisioning and then being able to run again in the browser, is there anything we want to update in that lesson? And Harsha, you've already got it open in the editor, so now or later, if you want to add a sentence or a subheading anywhere, go for it. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that.
And speaking of emergence, right? Like this is where it gets interesting. We have a learning target. I can build a simple transaction with Cardano CLI. That learning target's not going to change. We want people to be able to do that. But in order to get to that point, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong. And in our first draft of this lesson, we only cover so many of those possible errors. But Harsha just found one. And now we have this video documentation of, hey, be sure to check the network that your Demeter project is connected to. That might be something we want to add at the bottom of this lesson. I don't know. And that's just one example of details that over time we might use to edit these lessons. And so it's really exciting to start building a habit together. If you see something like that and you have course creator access, feel free just to go into the lesson and make an update directly to it. It would be really cool to see these become kind of ever evolving as all of us experience these things. And for example, if the sustain and maintain Fund 12 proposal goes through, we can think about the funds from that proposal being, how can they support ongoing maintenance of this course? There might be a lot of different ways to answer that question, but that's something for all of us to think about together. Can't stand the suspense. What's going to happen?
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
Very
Yeah,
good.
it's been bothering me for a week. So yeah, thank you,
Oh,
Sebastian
sorry.
and James. Yeah.
Sorry to keep you
Very
stalled out
nice.
on that, but that's awesome. Any other questions as learners in the course or things you've been reading as an editor that we should look at together? All right, let's do a little status update then.
So small question before we move on. So I remember in the previous version of demeter.run, we need to stop the node every time we stop working. But in this case, we don't necessarily have to do that, right?
Oh, I'm not 100% sure. Does it say anything about that in the docs?
Let me see.
I think it's best practice, right? If we're talking about what we want to show people for the first time, I think it's worth it to remind people to pause their instances, especially if they're not using them all the time. But then if it's a more
So
nuanced answer.
the pause part has been removed. There is only a delete part right now.
Oh, from the node, but there's still a pause button on your workspace, isn't there?
Yeah.
So I don't know, does that pause button also pause the node? And
No, it doesn't.
But you're right. You're right. The node has not the pause option. You have to delete it because.
Oh, you have to delete it every time? Oh.
Yeah.
they have
Because
any resources it's consuming?
yeah, it keeps consuming
It
resources.
does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and right. And why would it do that? Because a lot of people are the other use case for these nodes, besides being able to just get comfortable with using it in the web-based UI, is that these nodes are accessible to applications via API. And that's part of the TXPipe business model around Demeter, right? Is this is critical infrastructure. Cool. So I have some just status updates on the course and calls to action, but if you just interrupt me anytime if we need to look at different angles or if this raises unexpected questions for you. So first of all, here's the PPBL 24 website, the live examples page. Sebastian and I were working on this yesterday. So it used to be just the module 100 example. Now we have examples for other modules. 202 and 203 are coming in the future, minting tokens, minting NFTs. That's going to be really exciting. And for each of them, there's just a placeholder here. Okay. And then for module 201, there's an example already, but I can't see it until I connect my wallet. By the way, the routes here, right? So live examples points to module 100, and that's the link that you'll see right here. But then the additional examples have a dedicated URL, so it's easy to share this link with people via, any forum or anything. So let's look at the 201 example. This is where we are introducing how to build transactions with mesh for the first time. And the learning targets look like this. Let's navigate over to the course. Oh, I'm on the wrong. Oh, right. Okay. We'll talk about that later. But let's just look at the course this way. So module 201, build a front end. So what are people going to do? They're going to copy the PPBL 2024 app, which is this thing right here. So they're going to copy the source code for this website locally and run it on their computer. They're going to understand how the Cardano wallet component can be used and what are the prerequisites to using it in an application. So essentially just showing people these key points, right? We've got this component. It allows you to use the mesh hooks in a React project, and you need it, before all of that can work, you need to wrap your application in a mesh provider. These are exactly the points that are introduced in the Getting Started with Mesh guide. Okay, so we take people through that. Then we do the simple transaction and we do a validator interaction in 2013 and 2014. Okay. Then 2015 is just a note about deploying the application. We're going to show people that, hey, since this is a Next.js application, it's easy to deploy via Vercel, but of course, Vercel is not the only option. This is just giving people a way to take their ideas into prototype and public sharing. And so we figured that was worth including there. But the really juicy stuff is 2013, 2014, building transactions. And that's the examples you can see right here. 2013, here's a simple transaction. And 2014, a validator transaction. Each of them has buttons with some hard-coded values. Okay. Any questions so far just about the overview of 201 and the purpose of these demos? Okay, so the source code for both of these is right here, and we can look at it. And this is what I just wanted to connect with Sebastian about. So Sebastian and I are continuing our experiment where I'm kind of helping to write the example code for these lessons and building the demos here. And then he'll take the notes that we've taken here in these lessons and turn them into finished lessons. But this is another place where there's absolutely room for more contribution, okay? Our goal was to finish this module a week ago today, and we're still working on it now. And our goal was to finish minting tokens for today, but we have to write those learning targets. So we're running a little behind. It's completely normal. No PPBL course has ever been finished on schedule because we're all doing as much as we can in the time we have. But as such, here's a spot where if people are feeling the urge to contribute, we could definitely use you right here in 201 and 202, for example. So let's just look at these components and without going through the whole route down to these components, at the end of the day, this is what's important. So I'm in source, the components directory, and then the transactions directory. And you can see that there's the simple donation transaction and the always succeeds locking transaction. This one is super simple. There's the whole file right here. Okay, pretty straightforward. It's a single little div with a headline, right? Donate to the mesh team. You can see that right here, and a button. And what happens when that button is clicked? This happens, right? We start to build a new transaction. We send it to this hard-coded address, which is lifted directly from the mesh documentation, right? So here's a little test ADA donation to the mesh team in gratitude for what they've built. And then we build it, sign it, and submit it, just like people saw on Cardano CLI in module 102. All right, this is one of the best things we can do for people who are learning these concepts for the first time. Show the same concept in two different scenarios. Here's how to build a transaction with Cardano CLI, right? That was lesson 102.3 or whatever it was, right? Here's how to build a transaction with Mesh. Cool. And we start to build up the mental model of these kind of repeated patterns through all this stuff. So that's the simple transaction. Any questions about this example right here? All right, so I think that one's ready to go. And then we've got the always succeeds transaction. So Seb, this is a change from what we talked about yesterday. Yesterday, we were talking about using depositing tokens in a faucet as an example. But as I started to really think about this example, I realized that first, we can't have people sending tokens to the existing faucet because that would actually make the faucet less reliable when people are seeing it for the first time as beginners to the course, right? So module 100, one of the first things people do is after they mint their token, they get to interact with the faucet for the first time, which looks like this, right? Withdrawing from the faucet. If we start to have other people adding additional UTXOs to this validator address, this will get unreliable, and we could write the code to make it more reliable, but I don't think it's worth it. I think we want to keep this really simple. So that's one thing. But then also, if we want people to deposit tokens at another address, we could point them back to module 101, where they learned how to compile those validators for the first time. And we've shown a little bit about how that works right here, but we haven't fully connected the dots between this compiling step and building the address that you can use here. Additionally, people don't have their own tokens to lock yet, and they're going to learn about that in module 202. So for all of these reasons combined, it didn't quite feel appropriate to have people thinking about faucet deposits quite yet. But I think this is really exciting, is we can guide people towards that. So we can look at the always succeeds validator here, which is a really fun thing to show people. I don't know when the last time y'all looked at this address was, but check this out. Here's the pre-prod Cardano scan, and this is the address of the always succeeds validator, which, by the way, we already have the example code for this too. It's in the Plutus examples. Source PPBL always succeeds, right? So this is pretty much the simplest validator you could write. It always returns just unit, which, long story short, evaluates to true. And what we can do is we can compile this into an address, just like this, right? So we build the script, we build the address, and the address of this code right here is this one right here. And so you can see a lot of people have used this. There's a long history of hundreds of pages of 2,500 transactions on pre-prod. So this is a really fun historical artifact. And at the end of the day, the button that people get to play with, close that window. The button that people play with here has a hard-coded message on it. So when you press this button without changing anything, the result is, you see these two transactions 4 hours ago? That was me. So the result is an output UTXO right here. And you can, oh, this is Sebastian, maybe. All right, we have a hex string, okay? What is that hex string representing? Ah, hello. Hello for PPBL 2024. Cool. So we have a little hello message locked in the always succeeds validator. Where did that message come from? Let's go back to the source code over here where we build this transaction, and there's the message right there. So we send to the address with some inline datum. In this case, the value is just a string, but it could be a data object. There's other, it could be an integer, right? Mesh takes care of serializing this for us. Here's the amount, but it's just hard-coded, and I copied it right here. That's not efficient code. This would be better as a variable, but that's exactly the kind of thing we want to guide students to notice. So the last thing I want to show y'all here is that it's not just about, okay, well, here's a demo, here's a working button, you can press this button and the transactions work. But what happens next? Oh, here's a little message. And this part's important. All the values here are hard-coded, right? You can customize by changing the hard-coded values. Which ones? The ones we were just looking at, right? The amount of Lovelace or the message, for example, right? Here's some things you might try. Try to build a form that allows the user to decide how much ADA to donate instead of just hard-coding 5. Or allow them to choose an address from maybe, what if there was a drop-down menu of different pre-prod organizations you could donate to? These are just interesting little programming problems that if somebody wants to take on a project just to test out their skills and learn, I think these are really good ideas, okay? And we can keep going from there. So how does this feel? Seb, as the writer, what questions do you have about taking this approach with Always Succeeds?
It's pretty straightforward, because that this connects not only the code in the validator, but how all this looks in the front end, in the front end code. So it's pretty good. We can give the students a really good view about how to connect both worlds. in the same place.
Yeah. And you're the poet of those kind of connections. I love seeing what you do with that stuff. So thanks. All right. Other thoughts or questions? If you're looking at this for the first time and you're putting yourselves in the position of a learner, what questions do these examples raise for you? So I think one of the best things we can do now, we have a plan for module 201. Let's make a plan for the next module. So if I look at module 202 as an example, oh, we just got some placeholders here. They're not even mapped to learning targets yet, because that's the first thing we got to do is write some learning targets and then think about what demos we might want to show people here. Okay. So let's go back now to the course and think about this from the perspective of what learning targets we're going to need. Let me check. I think I need to be in here. No. We're good. Let's jump in. PPBL 2024 in the studio. Module 202. It doesn't have learning targets yet, so we get to make them up right now. So in past years, how have we handled minting tokens? We actually called this module 3 ways to mint a token, and we could change the title back to that. Maybe we want to show more than 3 ways to mint a token. I don't know. But let's first just define a couple of learning targets. In the past, when the title of this module was 3 ways to mint a token, the first way we showed people was actually via Game Changer, which I think is still a great option, right? So just as food for thought, let's suppose we start there. I can mint a token in Game Changer wallet. Why might this be a good idea? Well, before getting into any infrastructure, before worrying about how Cardano CLI works, if people don't want to go that far, before looking at minting components in an application like in Mesh, which of course we're going to have the opportunity to do in some examples like this, maybe it's really helpful just to send people over to Game Changer so they know about it and they see how quickly they can just mint some new tokens. That's a nice thing to know about. And I know that as a developer, there have been times where, hey, I've just needed some like throwaway pre-prod tokens to quickly test an application. And Game Changer remains a really convenient option for that. So I could imagine starting there. What are some other places that we could start? Or what are some other learning targets that folks want to add here? Yeah, Steve, what do you think?
I was just curious, why is it easy to get test data from Game Changer?
Oh, well, the test ADA part, I mean, first of all, it's no different than just creating a wallet and getting an address that you can hit the faucet. That part is
That's the main thing, and that's okay.
well, no, we're not talking about getting test ADA. We're talking about minting new native assets. And that's very, very easy to do in Game Changer. It's
okay.
a really nice platform for that.
Okay.
And so maybe we need to be more clear with this learning target. Maybe we wanted to use the term native asset. And so just like earlier in the course, we had a module called Write Your First Smart Contract, but then we start teaching people what a validator is. Maybe here the title is something about tokens, but then we start using the term native asset to show people why that's unique. And that's been one of the most fun things about every iteration of PPBL maybe not number one. Number one, we had people who really were already kind of in the ecosystem. But I remember Mick's understanding during iteration 2 of PPBL for the first time the concept of native assets. And that was really a legendary moment. He never looked back. He had all these questions. Why would I want to develop on Cardano? And once he really understood native assets, man, we've been friends ever since. So it's kind of fun to think about maybe the language we might want to use here, but what are some other ways that we might want to mint assets? I can think of a few, and we can work on the order later. I can mint native assets with Cardano CLI. Right? People have already learned how to build basic transactions, so we might as well teach that. And then at minimum, I would say I can mint a native asset in, or I can mint, keep the language the same. In an application using mesh, right? I think if we do these three things, maybe that would be enough. But what else might we want to include, or are there other ways to be more specific here? One other distinction we made in this module last year is for 202.2, minting assets with Cardano CLI. Do we want to show people how to do this with a native script and then separately with a Plutus script, and therefore write two separate learning targets to distinguish those? Or do we want to just include both of those in each of these lessons, right? We could say, okay, let's talk about native scripts and Plutus minting policies with Cardano CLI, and then we could do the same in 202.3. Does it feel better to split those apart, or to just keep a short list of learning targets and go deep in each lesson?
If you can just mint native assets on the CLI, is the reason to do them in Plutus or any language because you're doing that as part of a larger smart contract system? I mean, because doing them on CLI sounds easy, and why bother doing anything else? But
so these are actually two different vectors, and this is a perfect conversation for right now because this is what we want to communicate here. So if we're talking about minting with Cardano CLI, the fundamental transaction for this is going to look similar in both ways. And let's see if we can find an example here. So course repos, we've got some transaction examples. And here, oh, this is change your lucky number. Do we have a simple minting transaction here yet? First transactions. And native asset mint tokens. Oh, so this here, look, this is already made for 202. It says 202.1, but we can change the name of this once we have the official learning target. But let's just look at this bit right here. Right, so we're going to have a transaction build. And the critical line to start answering your question, Steve, is this one right here, mint script file. Okay. And this just points to some file. It doesn't matter what the extension is. .script is just used here as a decorator for our own convenience, right? But the extension here could be anything. So we're going to have a file. In this case, it looks like it says my token policy.script, but this could also be a Plutus script. So before we look at that, let's just compare. What is this? It looks like it's right here in the current directory. Did I include that? Oh, this is in the instructions. Okay. Yeah. So in these instructions, we show you actually how to do this. Make that my token policy script file that we're actually going to call on down here. Inside that file, place these contents. And this is called a native script. What does this native script do? It says you can mint an asset if you're minting it in a transaction signed by a certain signature, right? So this is a public key hash that's associated with a private key. And this token with this policy ID can only be minted if you have this signature. So if you follow these instructions and you replace this key with one of your own, then when you run this line right here, you'll get a different policy than the one we're using, okay? And that's going to have to be explained. This document doesn't quite show that, but it's just a rough draft. Okay, so that's minting with Cardano CLI with a native script. So far, so good?
Yeah.
So now this file, this script file, could be written by hand like this, but it could also be a Plutus script. Why would you want to do something like that? Okay. In a native script, I actually have some pretty interesting options, but they're a very limited set of options. I can say, okay, you need this one signature. I could write a script that's only slightly more complicated than this that just says you need a list of signatures, right? That's multi-sig. I could make a multi-sig list where M of N of those signatures are required. Okay, here's 10 signatures in a list. As long as 3 of these 10 sign, you can mint this token. So far, everything I'm saying right here is possible with native scripts. You can put a time limit on a native script. And so this is when you go to like pool PM, for example, and it says whether or not this policy will ever lock. What it's looking at is the time limit in a script. Okay, after this timestamp, you will never be able to mint these tokens again. That can be included in a native script. But once I start going beyond those basic rules, this is why I would want an on-chain language like Plutus or Aiken or any of the others. You can write custom rules for how to mint a token. Here's an example of one. You can only mint this new token if you already hold a certain other token. That's a pretty common rule in DeFi, right? Often when you're looking at joining like a liquidity pool, you mint liquidity tokens. Well, it will be wise to encode that rule. How many liquidity tokens do I get? I would hope that there's a Plutus validator guarding that I can only get those liquidity tokens if I'm already depositing some of a specific policy ID, right? But the list could go on, right? We can investigate datum. We could look at, you can only mint this token if the input is from a certain address, or if the output is to a certain address, or both. You can only mint this token if there's input from over here and output to over there. And that list of options goes on. And so, yeah, when you're talking about like building an integrated application where different validators are dependent upon each other, that's obviously that's going to be a place where the validator really shines, and where scripts, the limits, we see these limits pretty quickly.
Yeah.
How much sense is that making?
That's good.
So we're in the teacher's room right now talking about some things that we're going to want to communicate over the course of the module right here. So based on everything I just shared, do these learning targets sound sufficient? Or might we want to add, change, rearrange, remix? What do you think?
Well, I mean, don't you, I mean, just based on what you've been saying here in the last minute, like I can mint native assets based on conditions. I mean, or is that just, are you addressing that in a later module?
That's cool. If I said like conditions, should I say like conditions in a minting validator, something like that? And this would take us into Plutus just a little bit. That could be really interesting. So here's how to do it with Game Changer, quick and easy, get some native assets. Here's how to do it on Cardano CLI. What's implicit here is that in the lesson, we're going to focus on native scripts first so that we can cover minting validator in 202 dot maybe 4 if that learning target stays the same. Cool. So yeah, now this I could see this. All right, quick. Get your hands on some assets. By the way, Game Changer allows you to add images to those assets so you have full-fledged CNFTs. That's really cool. Excellent. Here's how to programmatically mint native assets with Cardano CLI once you understand this, which is connecting back to 102, where people built their first transactions. We're just using this kind of hands-on, down and dirty approach, right, to using Cardano CLI. People need to see things like this just once, just to have the basic idea. We don't need to stay here forever, although it's great to know about Cardano CLI as a utility. But at least this gives people a way to think about the transaction. And by the way, this one's got some metadata, so we can talk about that part too. Then Mesh does all the things Cardano CLI does. And so just like we can show in the 201 examples, right? So simple transaction, validator transactions. Let's rewind back to 102. Oh, here's a simple transaction, and here's a validator transaction, right? So we show the same transactions on Cardano CLI as in the front end. And now that loop, right, from CCLI to Mesh is being repeated over the span of just 2 lessons instead of separating across modules. And so we can say, all right, here's everything you learned in module 102, let's do it again, but now asset minting. Cool. Everything you learned in module 201, we're going to pick that up and we're going to add the asset minting part. Cool. Now, by the way, sometimes the rules can get even more interesting. Let's take an initial look at how to mint tokens with a validator instead of just a native script. That sounds exciting to me. I could see these being the 4 lessons. But what other thoughts are folks having?
Is this game changer thing already written or?
We did a version last year, and all of that content is in the old GitLab repo. But also, I know sometimes it can feel nice to start from scratch because tools change so much that writing it fresh is easier than trying to revise something that was written 18 months ago. So you can look at the previous examples, but if there's new stuff to share, this might be a nice chance for that.
Should I volunteer myself?
Only you can answer that question, but I'm not going to say no.
Yeah, if somebody already taken it, yeah. I don't.
Nobody took this one yet. And Martin, are you in the course as a contributor?
Don't think so.
Do you
I've
have
been
an
a little
Andamio
busy.
account? No, please, yeah. It's no, can't blame me for anything. Do you know if you have an Andamio account yet?
Mm, could be. I
Um,
did
ta- Take your
something.
time with that. When you have a few minutes, go to andamio.io. And when you first log in, you'll log in with Discord. That's the only way to log in for now on
Yeah,
this
I
very
did that.
early release. Okay, you did that part. If you're done with that part, drop me a line in Discord, and I'll show you how to get set up as a creator. We're not quite sharing that publicly yet because we're still building the official onboarding path.
Okay.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'd be happy to add you there, and we can jump over to Notion in just a second. But before we do, I wanted to just let's do a final check. Can we run with these 4 learning targets? I think this should be very similar to what we did last year. I think this is tried and true to go through things in this order. Does anybody have any objections to this set of learning targets?
In mint native assets that always sell.
That's
Always succeeds.
always succeeds. A new take on native assets. That's if it was 2021, I'd say that would be a great NFT drop. Always succeeds. Why hasn't anybody ever done that? And here, let's just make sure to change. We're not going to write this whole module today. Let's not pretend. So let's try to get this module out by next week. Let's see how that goes. And NFTs, I'll put next week for now because this is something that we could also move quickly on and we could spend a little time on uh, open spaces tomorrow, maybe looking at this if there's time. Um, Querying, that's probably not going to happen by next week. We can push this to July. And that's okay. Okay. Oh, don't like those colors. Fix that. Let's just go to mid-July to get the rest done. I know that Mix is excited to do some validator essential stuff. See if we can enlist him for that. And collaboration stuff. Let's just push it to late July for now. Because yeah, there's going to be lots of stuff going live right around then. All right, so yeah, like ambitiously already working on 201. This will be ready as soon as possible. Probably not by the end of the day today. The next 2 we can start. Let's get some names on some of these lessons if folks want to jump in. So I'm going to switch over to Notion now. Jump. So we're keeping track here in Notion. This is public, but the task board at the bottom is not. Writing 103. Alex and I kind of collaborated on this, so I got to touch base with him. He took some initial notes here. Writing 103.2. Steve's working on, I know you got a little writer's block, but I know you've been working on 103.3 and you need a Notion account too. So we'll drop you there. And we will need editors for those. So that's fine. That's all coming. Then we've got the next few lessons. So lesson 201.1 has a write task. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. And then we have similar for edit. Wish there was a way to batch create these tasks, but it's worth it. Yes. And so I know that Sebastian and I have been collaborating on the writing, at least to these middle ones here, but we can talk about but these are all ones that we can definitely use, folks. Can I just wrap this column so we can actually see? There we go. That's better. Okay. And now we want the new module. So this is going to be lesson 202.1, right? Number 2, 3. Right. So we could pencil Martin in to write 2021. Any objections to that? Try to decide in the next few days if you have time to do that this week. And if not, just let us know on Discord, or just let us know tomorrow at Open Spaces.
What's the time frame?
You know, it's loose, ideally by next Wednesday, but if you need more time, you know, we're delivering this course with the time we have.
Okay, yeah.
Awesome. When it comes to, let's go back to the learning targets for a second. Maybe you have them on your screen. Instead of going back and forth, just to review what we were just talking about, 2022 was about minting native assets with Cardano CLI and native scripts. Anybody interested in drafting a lesson about that? Or doing it with mesh or validators. These are open. I know that Seb and I are working on 201, and so if nobody picks these up, we can probably keep going on these, but these are opportunities if you want to jump in and give it a try. All right, let's do a quick checkout round before we break. Thanks for the chance to dive in to a few different things today. Sebastian, how you checking out today?
Really good. Really interesting session. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day, mate.
Yes, partner. Martin, how about you?
Yeah, good to be joining some in the effort. And I was wondering about how Dandelion Light fits into Dandelion and what you are doing with Dandelion.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great open spaces question. I know Ken's got a presentation tomorrow. If there's time after that or next week, we should definitely look at that.
Cool.
Steve, how about you?
I'm good. I'm good. I think we need to call in Quasar on that when we talk about that. Dandelion Light versus Dandelion, what we're doing. He's extremely interested in that. But for myself, I'm ready to go. Well, I'm not ready to go, but I'm working on it. I'm there. I'm with you. I got your backs.
Ready to be ready to go. Is
Yes.
about to be. All right. Ken, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, especially enjoyed the part before we started the recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to sharing what my progress on the website stuff tomorrow. And yeah, it was a good meeting.
Oh, can't wait. Looking forward to tomorrow as well. For anybody who doesn't know, Ken's been working on a revamped Gimbalabs.com and has a first demo coming up tomorrow. So that's exciting. Claudio, how are you leaving us today?
Good. I got cool info from you guys. I was exploring all the DevX resources. So good.
And Harsha.
Pretty good. I feel pretty good about this, and hopefully I can pick some editor roles, but I need some time to get through the course, and then I'll feel more confident. So yeah, I'm feeling good.
Brilliant. It's great having you as an editor. Thank you. And Daniel.
Hi, yeah, it was a great session today. And when you were asking if anyone was going to jump into, also create content, I thought about it, but I'm really still kind of new. I'm still figuring a lot of things out. But hopefully, I really hope that I'll be able to assist in that regard as well.
Oh man, I can't wait. And one thing you need to know about Gimbalabs is we're patient. We don't hurry. We move at human speed around here. So just hoping that everybody has a chance as you start to think about how you want to jump in. We'll be ready for you.
Okay.
All right, y'all. Yeah, like I said, tomorrow is Thursday, the 20th of June, and we have open spaces at 14:30 UTC. Like we've been doing every Thursday for some months now. And this is going to be a really exciting way to start closing out the first half of the year. We've got tomorrow and next Thursday, and then we're halfway through 2024. It's pretty awesome. We started this year thinking about a primary driver for Gimbalabs. We took that work into creating circles. And over these last few months, each of those circles has started to stand up in its own way. So we have a chance to look at that progress and we get to think about what we want to do in the second half of the year. So starting with a breakthrough project from Ken tomorrow, that's really going to be the main event at Open Spaces. I don't know if we can call it Open Spaces if there's just one main thing, but we'll figure that out. And then next week we can kind of close out, like I said, this half of the year and look ahead. So looking forward to doing that with everybody. If you're watching this video later, check out gimbalabs.com/calendar, which is where you'll find Zoom registration links to public calls like this one. Take care, everybody. Thanks for the time today.